Hello, one and all. Welcome back to ArcheAge Inspiration. Today's rolls are 4, 5, and 7. So let's see what we get. Looks like that will be Sorcery, Songcraft, and Auramancy. And that makes us into a Spellsong. Alright. Okay, before I get into the actual spec, I wanted to show something off to you guys that I just found out. If you have somebody charmed with Critical Discord, and you use your healing song, Ode to Recovery, if you hit them with it, it will actually take them out of stealth. The Ode to Recovery has an area of effect damage that radiates from wherever you're standing up to a certain area, and any impact on somebody who's already been charmed will actually break them out of a stealth. So, just as a heads up, if you are fighting somebody with this spec or any spec that has this ability, if you have charmed somebody and they try to stealth away, you can catch up to them and use that, and it essentially works as a active stealth detection. So let's get on to the actual spec and all the abilities that it has. The Spellsong brings some interesting crowd control and damage options to the table. The big focus of this build is on cast time reduction and attack speed boost, giving yourself a very fast cast time and a very fast global cooldown as your skill cooldown. As your attack speed affects your skill cooldown. With 3 stacks of Inspire, dual wielding, and all the cast time buffs, just the self buffs alone, you can get down to 75% or below on both of these, allowing for a lot of rapid fire attacks with your various spells. The crowd control elements come into play by means of Leech, Meteor Strike, some interesting combinations between Freezing Earth, Freezing Arrow, Frigid Tracks, and Vicious Implosion, which we'll get into here in a minute. And for initiation, we have Startling Strain, possibly paired with the Freezing Arrow to allow you to get in and close the gap. We've chosen a few various music abilities just as a utility. As the previous clip showed, you can use Ode to Recovery to bring somebody out of stealth. Otherwise, these are more or less fillers to help you get closer to Loudspeaker, for Bloody Shanty if needed for your party, as well as Discipline Performance. These are largely optional. You could switch over and grab some extra damage from Magical Precision, Aaron Zeb's Infusion if you so desire, but for this particular take on it, I decided to go with the extra utility that would be provided to the group, whatever group you're in with Quickstep, Ode to Recovery, Bloody Shanty. When 55 cap becomes the norm at the end of February, pushing for Aaron Zeb's Infusion and Zeal both, especially with the inclusion of Magic Precision, is probably going to be a good idea with this type of build. You should be able to get, I believe you have enough points, rather, to get all the way through Sorcery, all the way through Songcraft, and still have the 4-point passive of Spellsong, or the Auramancy part of Spellsong, which allows you to have the permanent Inspire stacks. Again, we are at 72.1% cast time and 73% skill cooldown with my current gear and equipment setup, as well as all the spells and buffs and such that this build provides. So to actually show off some of the combos, I'm going to go attack some of these lovely flesh golems here, and we'll see what this build can do. So one of the interesting things about this build is Freezing Arrow. It's a spell that's used quite often by a large number of builds, but there's one aspect of it that I don't really see many people use, and that's the second combination effect that it has. Inflicts Deep Freeze on chilled targets for 30 seconds. Duration reduced 50% in PvP. If you have the target chilled, you will actually put them to sleep for quite a long time. Now, sleep seems to have an innate diminishing returns, which cuts the duration into smaller chunks the more consecutive times you put someone to sleep. So the duration of the crowd control will actually diminish very quickly. Most other forms of crowd control do not actually have this diminishing returns, not the direct one at least. They just have the built-up immunity after a while that I've noticed. But using this in combination with some of your other abilities in an interesting way can provide for a quite extensive CC chain in a single target environment. Not to mention options for group crowd control, as you can toss out various sleeps to various targets in your group. So the way you would handle initiation with this build would involve usually opening up with Freezing Arrow, depending on how much of a jump you have on the targets. Freezing Arrow, of course, inflicts a slow, as well as does a pretty darn decent amount of damage. You will immediately follow up with Startling Strain. This is your true initiation. Startling Strain has a relatively slow travel time, and when it finally lands, the buff that you are granted will actually kick in, which reduces your reduces your cast time by 20% for 5 seconds, giving you a even faster cast time than what you would already have with this build. Once you've gotten close to them, once you've closed the gap with Startling Strain, I actually think you should have enough time in most situations to get off a Meteor Strike. This might seem kind of silly considering how long of a duration thing this is, but sorry, actually to say, Startling Strain leads into Leech and then Meteor Strike. Startling Strain, close the gap, and Leech, and hopefully take an extra debuff off of them with Freezing Arrow, providing the synergy, and then cast a Meteor Strike. Because of the extra cast speed you'll have from Startling Strain, you can actually get this off in a very small amount of time. Leech normally only lasts for a few seconds, but I think you actually will have enough time to inflict this. Once you've done Meteor Strike, you have a few extra options for crowd control. You can use a Critical Discord. This will consume the charm effect that you've inflicted with Startling Strain and cause a fear, and then you can open up with some extra damage spells. But my preferred method with this build, and something that I've never really seen done before, involves Frigid Tracks and Vicious Implosion, leading into another Freezing Arrow. So I'll just go ahead and show you exactly what this does when you go for it. I've got my attack speed buffs all stacked here. I'm going to go ahead and give myself another stack, and I'm going to do a sample initiation. We're going to open up the Freezing Arrow into Startling Strain. We're going to get close. After the stun lands, we're going to put him to sleep. As you can see, the target is now asleep for 10 seconds. More than enough time here. My cast speed buff is already gone, but not really that big of a deal for this particular demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and cast a Meteor. They may actually wake up before I get this off. Looks like we're good. Now, while the Meteor is landing, you can use Frigid Tracks, back up a little bit, and use Vicious Implosion. This will actually pull the target into your Frigid Tracks, stunning them. And that stun is a chill that combines well with Freezing Arrow. As you can see, the target is now slept again. And in this case, I can, of course, use the Critical Discord, assuming I wasn't taking a million years to explain it, and actually get a charm effect out in that same duration. Unfortunately, I've hit diminishing returns here because I've been kind of not doing things in the proper order. But you could actually follow that up with a Critical Discord, giving them a charm, allowing you to hopefully have enough time to inflict another sleep by means of these two abilities in tandem, Freezing Earth followed by Freezing Arrow, giving yet another sleep with the Deep Freeze. Between all this crowd control, of course, you have plenty of options for giving yourself extra buffs. Magic Circle, even using Bloody Shanty right before you cast one of your offensive spells will give you a big boost to your damage. So I didn't really show off everything that you could possibly do in between each of these crowd control effects, but rather interesting sequence that I've never seen in any build before, really, using Freezing Earth, Freezing Arrow, and even Vicious Implosion to trigger that stun, which also triggers the ability to use Freezing Arrow again. So, an interesting suite of crowd control. Again, slightly vulnerable to diminishing returns due to the nature of the insane quantity of both sleeps and stuns that you will trigger. Unfortunately, Frigid Tracks has a tendency to stun a target multiple times in short succession, resulting in potentially triggering that diminishing return very quickly. So something to keep in mind, but otherwise an option that is available to you. Also note that when you use Vicious Implosion, its damage is amplified significantly by having 3 Inspire stacks, but unfortunately this does consume those Inspire stacks, so your overall attack speed will be reduced after the Vicious Implosion. You'll have to reapply your thwarts as needed. Otherwise, sustainable DPS is provided by means of Critical Discord. You can use this to mop up fights, and otherwise just bring the damage as needed. And that's pretty much all I have to say, really, about the Spellsong for this particular take on it. Little gimmicky, I'm sure there's some more proven ways to do this, but you do have an extra toolbox of options here. You can dedicate yourself to being a bard part-time. You have the suite of damage and such from sorcery, and of course you could always pick up extra and different utility from Auramancy, possibly Shrug It Off, possibly Conversion Shield in lieu of some of these other elements. So overall, very interesting suite of abilities, and thank you for watching, thank you for liking the video, and I will see you next time.